Before this story begins, take just 1 second. If you enjoy emotional, slow-burn stories that stay with you long after the video ends, subscribe to the channel right now. Because stories like this one aren't just heard, they're felt. Now sit back, relax, and let me take you into a quiet town, a lonely apartment, and a connection that changed two lives forever. Emily Parker had been staring at the same blank wall for so long that it no longer felt empty. It felt accusing. The wall stood there in her small Maplewood apartment, pale and silent, reflecting the same question her mind had been circling for hours. What am I missing? Outside, rain tapped gently against the window, steady and patient, as if the sky itself had decided to sit with her in her frustration. Streetlights glowed softly below, their reflections stretching across puddles like melted gold. It should have been beautiful. It should have inspired her. But it didn't. Emily sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by sketchbooks, discarded pencils, crumpled paper, and half-dried paint tubes. Every idea she had poured onto paper over the past week felt wrong. Flat. Lifeless. Like an imitation of something she almost understood but couldn't fully grasp. She had moved to Maplewood only a few months earlier, chasing the hope that a new town would bring a new version of herself. A version that wasn't stuck. A version that created freely. A version that believed in her own talent again. Instead, she felt smaller than ever. The mural commission for the community center was supposed to be her breakthrough. A chance to leave her mark. A chance to remind herself why she chose art in the first place. But the deadline was only days away, and nothing she created felt honest. Emily leaned her head back against the couch and closed her eyes. Maybe I'm not good enough anymore, she thought. The idea scared her more than she wanted to admit. She stood and walked to the window, hugging her arms around herself. Across the narrow hallway of the apartment building lived Daniel Harris. She noticed him the day she moved in. Not because he was loud or flashy, because he wasn't. Daniel had a presence that didn't demand attention, but quietly earned it. He was in his early 50s, tall, with calm eyes that always seemed thoughtful, like he was observing the world more deeply than most people bothered to. Emily often saw him on his balcony, tending to plants with careful hands, or sketching in a worn notebook while sipping tea. He moved slowly, deliberately, as if he understood the value of patience in a world that rushed everything. She knew from passing conversations and neighborhood whispers that he had once been a respected architect, someone who designed homes that people still admired years later. Homes that felt lived in even before anyone moved into them. Emily had never spoken to him beyond polite greetings. Yet somehow, when she felt most uncertain, her thoughts drifted to him. To the way he listened when others spoke. To the quiet confidence he carried. To the sense that he understood creative struggle in a way few people did. The rain grew heavier. Emily looked down at her unfinished sketches again. Her heart pounded. This is stupid, she told herself. But her body was already moving. She grabbed her umbrella, slipped on her shoes, and stepped into the hallway before she could overthink it. Each step toward his door felt heavier than the last. Doubt whispered in her ear. What if he says no? What if he thinks you're wasting his time? What if you look foolish? Her hand hovered in the air. Then finally she knocked. Softly. The door opened almost immediately. Daniel stood there, taller than she remembered, wearing a simple sweater and glasses resting low on his nose. Warm light spilled from behind him, and with it came a calm that instantly eased something tight inside her chest. Emily, he said gently, a small smile forming. What brings you out in this weather? Her throat tightened. She hesitated, then exhaled. I was hoping you might help me with something. His expression shifted, not to surprise, but to curiosity. My mural, she continued, her voice trembling slightly. I'm stuck. Completely stuck. And I thought, maybe you'd understand. Daniel studied her face for a moment, not in judgment, but in consideration. Then he stepped aside. Come in, he said warmly. Let's take a look. Daniel's apartment felt exactly like she imagined it would. Warm. Thoughtful. Purposeful. Sketches lined the walls. Architectural photos framed moments of his career. Small models of buildings sat carefully arranged on shelves, each one a reminder of something once imagined, and then brought into the world. Emily suddenly felt exposed. She unrolled her canvas on the dining table, revealing the mess of colors and shapes that had haunted her all week. Daniel leaned in, hands resting on the table, eyes scanning every inch of her work. He didn't rush. He didn't speak immediately. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Finally, he nodded. "You're not lacking talent," he said calmly. "You're lacking permission." Emily blinked. "Permission?" "To be honest," he replied. "You're trying to make something right instead of making it real." Her chest tightened. "I don't know how to do that anymore," she admitted quietly. Daniel met her gaze. "Then let's figure it out together." The rain continued tapping at the windows as they spread out brushes and paints. Daniel didn't take over. He didn't correct her. He guided. He spoke about layers, about depth, about mistakes that turned into meaning, about how art, like life, was rarely about perfection and always about truth. Emily felt something shift. Each word unlocked a door inside her. Hours passed unnoticed. They talked about art, about fear, about starting over. Daniel shared stories of buildings he once loved and mistakes that taught him more than success ever had. Emily shared her loneliness, her move, and the quiet fear that she might never truly belong anywhere. Daniel listened. Really listened. For the first time in months, Emily felt seen. And somewhere between brushstrokes and quiet laughter, she realized something else. What she felt for Daniel wasn't just gratitude. It was something warmer, something deeper, something that scared her and comforted her at the same time. Emily didn't remember leaving Daniel's apartment that night. Not clearly. What she remembered was the feeling. A warmth that followed her down the hallway. A quiet hum beneath her skin, like something inside her had been gently awakened. When she stepped back into her own apartment, the silence no longer felt heavy, it felt expectant. She placed her sketchbook on the table and stared at it for a long time, her thoughts drifting back to Daniel's calm voice. The way he stood beside her without crowding her. The way he made her feel capable without ever saying she wasn't before. Sleep came slowly. Her dreams were filled with color, deep blues, warm golds, layered textures, and the sense that something important had begun. Morning arrived softly. Emily woke with a lightness she hadn't felt in months. For once, she didn't dread the day. The doubts that usually greeted her mornings were quieter, as if they had decided to sit back and observe instead of attack. The note Daniel had slipped under her door rested on the table. She picked it up again, reading the words carefully, letting each one sink in. "Tomorrow we'll start again. You're closer to the story than you think." It felt personal, thoughtful, like an invitation, not just to paint, but to continue a conversation that hadn't really ended. She dressed quickly, grabbed her sketchbook and stepped outside. The air in Maplewood was crisp, clean from the night's rain. Even the usual sounds, cars passing, distant voices, felt sharper, more alive. When she knocked on Daniel's door, her heart raced. He opened it with the same calm warmth as before, but this time, his smile lingered just a second longer. "Good morning, Emily," he said gently. "I hope you rested." "I did," she replied, surprised by how true it felt. "I'm ready." Daniel had already prepared the space. Paints arranged neatly, brushes cleaned. The mural stretched across the table, waiting. "We'll start with the background today," he said. "Let the foundation carry the emotion." He poured tea and handed her a cup. The simple gesture settled her nerves more than she expected. They worked quietly at first. Their movements found a rhythm. Dip, stroke, step back, observe. Their hands brushed occasionally, subtle and unintentional. Yet each time it happened, Emily felt a small spark run through her. She spoke more freely than she meant to. About music that inspired her. About childhood afternoons spent painting at the kitchen table. About the small victories she clung to when doubt threatened to swallow her whole. Daniel listened with his full attention, his eyes never wandering, his responses thoughtful and measured. As the hours passed, the mural began to breathe. Colors layered into depth. Shapes emerged with intention. What had once been chaos was now becoming a story. And beneath the art, something else was forming. A connection built not on urgency, but on understanding. In the afternoon, Daniel shared more of himself. He spoke of cities he had traveled to, of buildings that taught him patience, of moments when he had to walk away from his career to rediscover who he was beyond it. I used to think my work defined me, he admitted quietly. It took losing parts of it to realize I was more than what I created. Emily felt those words settle deep inside her. I'm afraid of that, she confessed. That if my art doesn't matter, I won't either. Daniel met her gaze, steady and sincere. Your worth was never dependent on your success, he said. Art is an expression of who you are, not a measurement of it. Her chest tightened. No one had ever said that to her before. At one point, she paused mid-stroke and looked at him. You've changed how I see my work, she said softly. How I see myself. He smiled, not proudly, but gently. You did the work, he replied. I just helped you listen to yourself. There was a pause. Something unspoken settled between them. Emily noticed the faint shift in his expression. Something tender. Something cautious. They returned to the mural, but the air felt different now. Charged. As evening approached, golden light spilled through the windows, bathing the room in warmth. Daniel set his brush down and stepped back. You've captured something special, he said. This isn't just paint. It's movement. It's hope. Emily swallowed. I couldn't have done this without you. There it was again, that look in his eyes. Pride mixed with something more vulnerable. I'm glad I could be here, he said quietly. Silence filled the room. Heavy, but not uncomfortable. The kind of silence filled with questions neither of them rushed to answer. Then Daniel spoke again. Emily, he said carefully. I need to say something. Her heart pounded. I've noticed the change between us, he continued. I didn't want to rush it or make you uncomfortable. But there's something here. Something worth acknowledging. She set her brush down, hands trembling slightly. I feel it too, she admitted. His expression softened with relief. I think, he said slowly, that if we're patient, if we're honest, we might discover something meaningful. Emily nodded, her chest fluttering. I want that, she whispered. From that moment on, everything felt different. Each glance lingered longer. Each laugh carried weight. The mural itself seemed to reflect what was happening between them. Layered, complex, quietly alive. When the final colors were added, they stood side by side, taking it all in. It's not perfect, Emily said. No, Daniel replied. It's real. As she prepared to leave, Daniel walked her to the door. Tomorrow, he said, we'll add the final details. And maybe share another cup of tea. Emily smiled, warmth spreading through her. I'd like that. The hallway lights reflected off the damp floor as she stepped away, her heart full, her mind racing. This wasn't just about a mural anymore. It was about growth, connection, and the quiet beginning of something neither of them had expected, but both were ready to explore.